First of all, I'm hitting up rolling high numbers. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Amino Quest. It's nobody's favorite streamer here, Aaron Cleveland. And with me, I have my favorite streamers, James Kaluger and Danny Gadigan. So today we are doing something a little different. We are going to have a conversation of different D&D related things. In an effort to work out some kinks electronically wise. If you happen upon this stream, we want to let you know that Amino Quest, proudly presented by Amino Cat Entertainment, will be premiering on February 3rd at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, which of course, is a Wednesday, as it always is, and we'll be presenting our stream every week after that. Hopefully, I mean, yes, optimistically. We are sponsored by Nerds Abroad. They are an excellent dice company, and they have provided us with some beautiful dice that we will be rolling, and hopefully rolling well. So, in the meantime, we're just gonna talk. We're just gonna have a discussion between friends, between us good buddies. So real quick, what is your first experience with D&D? Let's start with Danny.
So my first experience with D&D was thanks to you, actually. Stop. But so Jeff actually, he's played before, my husband, and yeah, I haven't heard a lot about it, but I knew it was a nerdy game. And and then when you guys started, I don't even know, how did we even start? It was just like, did it come up in conversation, or how did that start? I'm trying to figure that out now, because I'm trying to think, like, well, how did that even come up? Because you guys were playing, and then you invited us, so that was really nice of you.
Yeah.
That was it. You guys were already playing. You had a group, and you invited us, which was a huge blessing. And then it was so nice because I think we needed that camaraderie, and it came at the perfect time because it was. Yeah, and then we started playing. I was really confused at the character sheet, and Jeff was helping me, and you were helping me. And I just remember that Sarah, she had her character, and I was like, you guys are really good. You guys know what you're doing. And I just remember, like, I had no idea what I was doing, and I was trying to figure out my character sheet.
Did you know we had zero clue what we were doing?
You look like you had at least 50%. No, you looked like you had a clue. And so I was like, and then I remember when I wanted to look in the barrels, and then I rolled like a really low, and you're like, you found cabbage. And I was like, oh, I can make kimchi out of this or something. And then there was an ongoing joke, but that was my first experience. And I really just wanted to kind of play it with Jeff, and so that's something that we could do together. But it turned into something I really, really enjoy, and just really special.
Awesome. Jeff, as you will soon learn, is actually going to be our dungeon master for our stream premiering in 2 weeks. We three will be players, and Jeff, who is working behind the scenes now, will be our dungeon master, um, and it'll be awesome. And with that, we move on to James. James, what is your first experience with D&D? How did you become involved in this beautiful game?
Well, my first experience with D&D actually occurred way back in about 2010. I came back from living up in Los Angeles, where I graduated from film school, and I reunited with some old high school buddies of mine, and we immediately jumped into a campaign. Well, actually, my high school buddy, Scott, he was DMing at the time. He says, "Hey, would you like to come and join this game of Dungeons and Dragons?" Now, I had heard about it. I was familiar with Dungeons and Dragons, but I had never really gotten into the full thing. So when I sat down with him, um, he kind of brought me through the hoops, the basics, and then we jumped right into a campaign. It was a lot of fun. So over the course of 10 years, I sort of did Dungeons and Dragons on and off, whether it was with his group, whether it was another smaller group where we did a couple one-offs. But it wasn't until I met Jeff and I started gaming with you guys that I actually did it regularly.
Very cool. Cool. Yeah, I started, gosh, it must be like 3 years ago now. And you know what? I think what initially brought me to it was Stranger Things, which makes me super basic, but I'm really just a poser is what I'm getting at. But I was like, that looks like a lot of fun. I should try that. And then since I'm a nerd, it wasn't hard to convince all of my nerdy friends to get together and play. But that was that. I know, Danny, you had kind of talked about how it can be kind of intimidating at first. But how you kind of worked through that, and what was your process of learning how to play, really?
I think I was confused by the character sheets, and it can be intimidating. But you guys had a lot of confidence in me. Like, I felt like you were like, you didn't, I was confused, but you guys, I was able to ask you guys questions, and you were able to talk about it, and just in a very, like, no matter how slow I was at getting it, I think you guys were really patient in explaining the rules, and I would ask you probably the same questions over and over again for a while there. um, but there is a learning curve, and once you get the basic, like a foundation of it, you can really fill in a lot with your imagination. And it's such a fun thing for actors, especially we're all actors and nerds. And it's just like really fun to fill in the story together and create kind of like these unexpected moments, and drive the story forward together. And that is my favorite thing, is just how unexpected the roles are, and then the outcome, and then adding the modifier is actually, now I'm like, oh, okay, modifier, initiative. I'm like, I didn't know what any of these words were, and I'm like, what is initiative again? Do I roll the like, and the D6 is just a regular die, and now I call it a D6. And so I'm like, do I roll the D6 or the D12 or the D20? And the D20 is the most popular one to roll. And I'm like, now I'm a dice goblin. So
yeah, it gets really addicting when you're like, oh, they're so shiny, or they're like really heavy, and you're like, oh, I love how heavy this dice is, and it's just like clunk. I mean, that's pretty addicting to hear that like clunky noise.
Nice crack.
Yeah. I know that initially when I first started playing, even before you guys joined in, we were basically doing everything wrong. Literally, it was like we had zero clue what we were doing. up until pretty recently, actually, we still had zero clue what we were doing. But that didn't really stop us from playing and from having fun. And I think that that's like super important, especially if you're like thinking about it or you want to get into playing and you're like, but it seems really complicated. Um, it's like a learning, like either you have someone that knows how to play and they'll be happy to kind of bring you along and teach you and help you, or it's a learning experience where all of you guys are going to get together and learn how to do it. And so it's like never let that discourage somebody from attempting to play if it seems a little complicated at first, because no matter what, it's going to be a ton of fun.
Yeah. I love that too, because it's like our group is so open and they come in all together and you can ask questions. And we're trying to now get James's wife to play so she can ask us questions. And we're like, come on, Vanessa, can
You
play?"
manage that, and you will be my hero. So,
That
what
was
was
the
your
lovely Sarah.
yeah, that was Sarah. She dropped in for a split second, and
yeah. So James, what was your how was the learning process for you? Were you kind of in, I know you, so believe it or not, you have actually have the most experience here out of the three of us, since you've been playing since 2010. I wasn't even out of high school yet. But so what was that learning experience like?
Well, first off, D&D is like math. There's a lot of numbers in it. There's a lot of formulas to remember.
If you say that, people are not going to want to.
Yeah, I know. I'm just like, I tuned off like half the population to D&D right now. No, that's not
like,
that
I'm
bad.
out.
Yeah, they're like, forget it. No, it's not that bad. The hardest part was just remembering what does what. Like Danny says, the various dice, the various formulas. What is initiative? What's in a modifier? What skills do what? So it's just remembering the basics. But like Danny also said, once you figure that out, everything else falls into place. You can kind of, you sort of intuitively click into it. So for me, I guess the learning curve was just remembering the basics, remembering, initiatives and modifiers and this, that, and the other. But the more you play, the more you know, the more you kind of get used to it.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
Me, for me, that was a big plus, because having that experience really helped.
Awesome. Yeah. One of the ways that I kind of think about it, and especially because things get a little confusing sometimes, is, I could be a little wrong, but I don't think I'm far off when I say that the D20 most of the time, unless you're rolling for damage, it's like you're gonna roll a D20, right? Which is the big, like, classically D&D dice. So I feel like that's a little like tip, like most of the time, not every single time, but most of the time, it's like all the other dice are just different damage based on what weapon you're using, and then you have your D20 for basically everything else.
This is your basic RPG dice. That's what you use for just RPG.
Right. Well, and what's awesome about D&D is that you have this like dungeon master, right? This DM who runs the game, and really, it's awesome because they're going to be the one to tell you what to do. Right. Like, all you need to do is be like, hey, I want to do this thing. My character is going to do this, and the DM is going to say, okay, well, you need to do a wisdom check or something, or an athletics check to see if you're going to do that. And then you'll go, okay, so that means I roll my D20 and I add my modifier and all that sort of good stuff. But I love that with D&D, you have someone who is going to guide you along your path, often to a terrible, terrible death. but
Not all the time, but
well, in our campaign probably,
yeah.
but we probably deserved it.
Yeah.
In our
So-
campaign, we call the DM God.
Yeah, that was, you know.
And just
think
like God, sometimes he kills us.
Yeah. God. It's a very Old Testament God, you know.
Smite.
Craters everywhere.
Yeah.
Roll for smite.
Yeah. So in this new campaign, we all play different characters. Just a real brief, like, give us a real brief introduction of your character. Like, don't go into too much detail on backstory or anything like that, but just who are you playing? Let's start with Danny.
This is the Phandelver character?
Yep.
Okay. I'm playing Cosette Sea Dove. She's a bard. And that's it, because I can't give any more backstory. No, she's a human.
Nope, you can't give anything more, but
but maybe a little more.
you could probably we'll do a little
You
more.
can expand a little bit on it.
How did you go about? How did this character come into being? How did you why did you choose a bard? Why did you choose a human? How did you kind of go through this process?
I really like the bard because I like the supporting character, and I think in real life I like to be kind of like I like to listen to my friends. I like to be like support, and I love to help others heal. So I'm like, oh, I get to help everyone heal in the party. So so I really wanted that support character, and I was wondering between cleric and bard, and I was talking to Jeff and you, and then you're like, oh, that would be great to have a support character and a healer in the group. So I was excited about that. And I really like how bards also, they have the quirky side, and they can be, like they have vicious mockery as one of their cantrips. And it causes disadvantage if they fail on something saving throw. So yeah, I was like, oh, okay, I can help the party with that. And now I know what disadvantage is rolling 2 dice, 2 d20s, and then taking the lower one. So I was like, before I was so confused about what's advantage and what's disadvantage. But now there's always something to learn, though. I think that's the fun part too about D&D. There's like always something new to learn, and when I learn it from watching someone else play, or just asking questions to you, I learn it, and I really want to use it right away, because it's like a new exciting like spell. Or when we level up, I'm like so excited to use my new spells and pick the right ones that I think will help the party. So I think it's really exciting because you're always learning and you're always growing as a D&D character and as a person. And I think I've grown so much as a person by playing D&D, and I'm not even like, because you have to really communicate. You have to listen, and you really have to communicate, and you have to be assertive with what you want to do, because there's a lot going on, and you want to get your point across, and you want to make sure that you help your party with your gifts. So I'm like, oh, this is really helping my real life. And
well, I think it's so interesting that you kind of talked about how as a bard, they're like a support character, or and as a person, you like to support people. And I'm like, I always think about how our characters that we create in D&D are, whether we like it or not, some sort of reflection of us or how we view ourselves. And even in that way, you can kind of like learn a little bit about how learn a little bit about how to be a better person through the decisions that our characters makes and our characters' flaws. Like everything is amplified, so you can like be like, oh, do I do that in real life? Maybe I kind of do, not in such a grand way, but
Yeah. You kind of get to do the things that you would never do in real life and explore those too. And it's like
right.
therapy too in a way. So it's yeah, and it really makes you think about your life too, and you get to have the freedom of like killing monsters
Yeah.
without actually being scared of monsters in real life and
I
doing
mean, secretly, we all want to be in a fantasy world. So, I
yeah.
mean, it's better than the world we currently live in.
Yeah.
James, what about you? So, what is the character that you're playing, and how did you kind of like go about creating that character?
Well, the character I'm playing for Strahd for that new campaign is Rowan Whitecrest. He's a ranger. He's actually a City Watch turned mercenary for hire. So he's got a little bit of a backstory, which I don't want to get into too much because I don't want to give it away. But he's got a fairly rich, fairly deep backstory. There's actually two reasons I chose to play a ranger. One, when I first started playing D&D, I played a paladin. I'd played fairly lawful good, neutral good characters, or I played these tanks, these guys that were well armed, well armored, got there in the front lines, took care of business, and just mowed right through the enemies. For this, I wanted to play a character that was sort of the sniper of the group. He stayed back. He picked off the enemies from a distance. He acted as support.
Yeah.
Sort of scout. Of course, being a big Lord of the Rings fan, I loved the character of Aragorn. I loved, what he did, what his life was, sort of his backstory, his history. And I'm like, I would kind of like to live that, in a weird way.
Yeah.
I kind of like to be that guy. I want to be that guy who's silent but cool and kind of deadly and a little bit mysterious. That's that's the character I kind of want to push for. So I figured, hey, you know what? This is a great campaign to try.
Yeah. I think we all kind of. That's what I love about D&D too, is we can like create these little characters that we secretly have always wanted to be, and I think, as well as reflections of ourselves and who we want to be, our characters are often reflections of characters that we want, identify with or want to identify with and want to be, that sort of thing.
Right.
I know for me, my character, I'm Calagon Balavizor.
Such a mouthful, man.
I know. Well, you know what? I got the name, and Calagon is actually from Lord of the Rings. So he's, and Calagon the Black is the very first dragon, that was in existence in Middle Earth. And so I was like, oh, and Calagon, that's pretty cool, and it's pretty obscure. I don't think I'll have a problem with it.
I think you're okay. I don't think Tolkien's estate's gonna come after you just yet.
Yeah, just yet. I mean, after they watch this, they'll definitely be like, oh my gosh, we got to get this guy.
Yep.
My character, he's a rogue, but he definitely has that same sort of, he's definitely, stays away, strikes from the shadows. He's not that sort of like shady rogue that you kind of see as the rogue is like traditionally played. He's more, how do I say it? Well, he's an investigator as well, or kind of like this detective. So I kind of threw in a little bit of like this private eye-esque vibe going, as the same as if you would, I don't know. I like to take things and put them where they don't belong, just to see what happens. So,
Right.
that's what I'm kind of saying. I'm like, okay, so how can I take this class and do something totally different with it, which is like it's going to be interesting to watch us play with a rogue, a ranger, and a bard.
Yeah, it'll definitely
You're
be a
going to
lot of
have
fun.
to be real careful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
We're a testy group, that's for sure.
yeah. We'll have to keep our distance,
Right.
you know. Have you played a ranger before?
No, actually, I haven't. I've always wanted to because, like I said, I've
Mhm.
always sort of been enamored with this idea of a character that, again, he knows the land. He kind of lives off the land.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he can track almost anything. He's the sniper. He's again, he's kind of silent and deadly and all that. So it's sort of outside my wheelhouse normally. Normally, like I said, I play these tanks. I play these guys that are built for battle. They go in, they take care of business, and they get out. So it's gonna be kind of interesting to play this. I have played a rogue. Normally, though, my rogues are a little bit more self-serving because I always try to kind of play a character that's outside my own personality. And I like these kind of dangerous guys. I like these dangerous rogues, sort of these thieves, these sneak thieves, these guys that are in for the money or for the glory or just for themselves, because that's not me. So I'm like, I kind of want to see how it's like to live like that character. So I've played rogues, I've played paladins, I played barbarians, because again, those are just pure muscle.
Yeah.
But no, this will be the first time I'll play a ranger, so it'll be interesting in this campaign to see exactly how that works out.
Yeah. What were some of those ones that you've played? What was one of your favorites?
I've been a fan of both paladin and I've played clerics. They're a lot of fun because, of course, clerics have a lot of spells. There are a lot of magical powers that you can use. But at the same time, clerics are the most complex character because you have a lot of spells to remember, and you have to remember what does what, how much time do you have to prepare a spell, all these little intricacies. So for me, probably, even with that being said, I would think that both a cleric and a paladin are probably my favorites because a paladin is pretty much almost a straight up fighter, I guess you could say.
Right. Right.
He's the guy that he's the brawler without really being a brawler. He brawls, but he does it with style.
Yeah, he's he's like the saintly barbarian, almost.
Right.
Yeah.
What about you? What's your favorite characters? What do you kind of gravitate towards?
I have liked a lot of different things. I haven't played too many magic characters. I really, the few that I've played, I've started to really kind of enjoy them. Like, there's one character in particular that I played. He was a warlock, but he was also a halfling, and he was a cook. His name was Ned. And I really loved playing this character because he didn't know he was a warlock, right? Because the magic classes, you have a cleric, right, who is basically like a priest, right? So they have a deity that they serve, and that's the source of their magic, right? D&D and magic characters it's all about their sources, right? Like, where does that magic come from?
Right.
And so cleric is a priest. You have a sorcerer, right, who basically has the magic comes from within them, from some sort of like, ancient bloodline or some sort of like magic blood that it kind of like they're the source of their own power, right? And then you have a warlock, and what's fun about a warlock is it's similar to a cleric in the sense that they have a deity of sorts, but it's less it's less clerical.
It's less work.
Right. It's less priestly and more, it can come from any sorts of different sources. So for Ned, right, he was a warlock that didn't know that he had basically been unwittingly he had made a pact with a high-level demon, and so these crazy, dark, horrible things would happen around him / because of him, but he had never any idea that they were happening. He was just a cook.
Just terrified of what was happening to him.
Exactly. Like, and he was a lot of fun to play. And then of course we have the final, of the magic classes. Oh, we have two more magic classes, right? You have a druid, whose magic comes from nature, and then you have a wizard whose magic comes from their own like intelligence and their hardcore studying skills. So it's like the magic of learning.
The magic of knowledge.
Yeah.
Or you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's so interesting to I love how the flexibility within the classes, right? So you can do so many different things with pretty much any class. I mean, like, and when I'm creating a character, that's actually the first place that I start. I start with the class rather than, I might have this inkling of an idea of what I kind of want this character to be, but I'm going to start with the class actually before I actually start with, the race or
the occupation or whatever he does,
right, his background.
Yeah.
And I find that kind of gives me, I can really get a lot of direction from that. So for me, I'll have some sort of inkling of like this character I kind of want to play. I'll choose a class, and then I'll choose a race that makes sense for the class, but also maybe hopefully will provide some sort of racial bonus, but it is really fun to do the opposite. Like, I think a halfling barbarian could be a lot of fun, like creating those characters that,
they're unexpected.
Right. Unexpected characters can be a lot of fun.
Yeah. I like mixing our genres, if you will, like, our
right.
The races. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say when creating characters? What is the most entertaining part of it, and what is the most challenging part for you?
Good question. I think the most entertaining part of it is, I think, what we were kind of talking about before with the, like, how can I make him interesting? How can I make him different? And just like the idea of like building out this character that you had an idea about, I think is super cool and super fun, and kind of even a little bit of like doing their backstory, and just giving flesh to this character is a lot of fun.
Yep.
I think the most challenging part is making a lot of the like decisions on like kind of like the minor details of stuff, like, okay, like what are your proficiency bonuses, what are making sure that because sometimes it's not great, but sometimes I feel like I focus too much on my character's build, and it can actually, it starts to like hinder my creativity a little bit, because I'm like, I start to think about, okay, well, how am I going to make the most powerful character, as opposed to, okay, what's a fun character to play?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And what about you?
I like the kind of the same thing like you were talking about. I like the basically the sandbox that you get to play in when creating your characters. You can basically make your character any backstory. You can pick any race. You can pick any class. Any affiliation. You can give it a god, or make it completely atheist. Whatever you want to do. You can basically from scratch create this being. So it's always fun to kind of give your character or characters, if you create more than one, sort of this diversity. One character is never going to be the same, or you try to make one character different from the other one, so they're not all the same. So it's fun just picking a personality, just embodying that personality and that character for however long you're playing it. The most difficult part about being a character or creating a character, probably kind of what you were saying, is just remembering, one, to have fun with it, not to get too wound up in the numbers and, oh geez, he's strong enough, oh, is he smart enough, is he fast enough. Just let the backstory, let the character inform the abilities, not the other way around. Another thing is, you don't want to get too married to your character. You don't want to get too attached to it, because you can be killed off really quick. I mean, I've had situations where I've seen characters drop within the first outing in the campaign, and the player's got to come back with a new character, or we have to find a sorcerer or a cleric to revive them or whatever. So it's one of those things like, don't get too married to whatever character, and don't feel too bad if he dies, because hey, you got carte blanche to make 1,000 more characters. So
right,
you really are given free reign with D&D and pretty much any RPG game, but especially with this, to make your own character or characters as much as you want, and as diverse and as interesting as you want. So.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's really what I think. I think that's what's so great about D&D, is because it really is. It's about the characters and about being able to, develop a character along. And your character is going to change no matter what, because sometimes you spend years with the same character, as it takes because it can take a really long time to get through a campaign, and so I think, like, exactly like you said, like if someone is new to it, I would encourage them to focus a lot less on worrying about the character, right, and just being worried about the build of the character, and that will come with time, where it just becomes sort of intuitive, and just being like, just focus on the character that you want to play. Don't worry too much on the other stuff, because it'll figure itself out eventually, or your character will just die. And sometimes it's inevitable, and sometimes it's not about the build or how strong your character is. It is just bad dice rolls. Exactly.
Man. That's another thing I want to talk about really quick, because for me, I know that's one of my big, I swear it's a curse, it's one of my big downfalls, is usually rolling some pretty bad rolls. So for those of you out there that are new to D&D and you're rolling dice, of course, dice rolls are how you play the game. You're never gonna. One thing I've learned is you're never going to roll 1,000. In which case, by that I mean you're never gonna roll top rolls all the time. Sometimes you're gonna roll crit fails. Sometimes you're just gonna roll 1s and 5s and 6s and whatever, these low numbers. Although for me, I think it happens more often than not. But I mean, it's hard, because the dice giveth and the dice taketh away. It really is true. But from your point of view, how often do you run into a bad dice roll, or just a bad session where you're just hitting low numbers all the time?
Oh man, I mean,
or is that just me? I don't know. It could just be my curse that I have to bear.
It happens a lot, unfortunately. We want to mood lighting. We're obviously we're working on some tech issues, so this is the mood lighting is representative of that. I mean, bad dice rolls is a part of the game. I think you have to learn to love the good ones and the bad ones, each for their own unique things. I mean, if you're gonna get upset because you have you got some bad dice rolls, like, everyone gets a little miffed about it, but you kind of have to just be like,
it's a game. You just
it's a game. I'm having fun with it. You gotta you gotta have fun with it, and you gotta roll with it.
Yeah, I see what you did there.
Yeah,
not only that, sometimes a bad dice roll can lead into something good as far as role play is concerned. Sometimes it forces you to make some sort of decision or action that you normally wouldn't make in the normal gameplay.
Right.
And it takes you off in a different direction, and it might surprise yourself where you go. So you never want to get too hung up on low dice rolls, although sometimes it does. I will admit, sometimes I do get a little frustrated because I'm like, oh man, that's, I wanted to do this really cool thing and I rolled a 2 and now I look like an idiot and I can't do it. So, but you just kind of have to, like you say, you just have to roll with it and you just kind of have to let it go.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh man. Whoa.
Oh, you're in a club now, or no, actually the cops are after you.
I was like, oh
no. See ya. Looks like we lost our moderator. Well,
oh man. Yeah. So
yeah, so I mean, that's the tough part about D&D. That's, to me, if you were to ask me what is the toughest part for me, the one part that I can, it still gets to me is those tough dice rolls. But you're right. You gotta just accept it and see where it takes you.
Yeah, for sure. So obviously, we're in the middle of a pandemic and a rave apparently.
Yeah, you're having a rave over there.
So, what sort of challenges have? I mean, I guess I know because I'm a part of them. But let's take a second to talk about the challenges that we've come across and how we're trying to play D&D safely in COVID.
Right. Well, I mean, there's always the obvious challenge is the distance. I mean, D&D has always been a communal experience. You get together with your friends, you grab some snacks, you grab some drinks, and you hang out for, 5, 8, 12 hours if you're really into it. And you just, you hang out and enjoy yourselves and you enjoy the company. And hey, Sarah's back, and she's gone. And see, you don't get to see your friends a whole lot. So when they show up, you get excited.
Well, and the funny thing is, the stream, nobody knows what you're talking about, James. They can't see us what we're seeing.
Oh, that's right. Well, never mind. Our production manager just showed up, and I got excited because it was another human being.
My wife, the production manager, just showed up on our screen, and
that's right. I forget we can't.
Unfortunately, you were unable to see her beautiful face. All of you
missed out
watching us.
But that's but see, you don't get to see the people, you don't get to see your friends. And I think for me that's the hardest part, is not having that interaction. And it could be well, another thing that could be tough too is just the technology. I mean, sometimes you got a bad internet connection, you got bad lag. I mean, it can really make or break a game. And me, I like having that interpersonal, right there, live and in-person connection when I'm playing a game. So I'm just, and I miss that. I miss that when for how long have we been in the pandemic now? So that's the rough part. So I think once this is all over, I really want to have just a giant 3-day long game.
Yeah, 3-day, and exactly. It's like I've read things that are like, when this pandemic is over, I'm kissing everybody on the lips, no matter who they are. I'm just it doesn't.
I don't know. I might draw the line on that, but I will definitely hang out with a lot more people, and I will take a lot less for granted. That's for sure.
Yeah, really.
Least of all D&D, but no, I think that's for me. That's always sort of been my personal thing. Is I miss that interaction, and D&D is all about interaction, and it's all about growth with a group and a company of friends. So I think something, as much as is doable to play a game via Zoom or whatnot. There's something lacking with the social distancing D&D. I don't think it's going to be a permanent thing. Thank God.
For sure, yeah.
And I'll be really looking forward to playing with everybody again.
Yeah, and I think just like we're doing here and like we're doing now. I mean, we really just have to. You got to keep trying. I mean, we are in Lord knows what week now that we have been trying to work out technology kinks, which we have a little bit extra because we're trying to stream things and stuff like that. But I think that we've always had a good time playing, even if we've had some little technical issues. And you know what? Like we're working on the technical issues, and I think that is important for everyone who wants to play, is to, just keep doing a little bit of research, keep trying to figure out that, the platform that works for you,
Right.
that sort of thing.
And even if you don't plan on doing social distancing gaming, let's say you plan on waiting till this thing all blows
Mhm.
over and you can all get together, it's still good to know how this technology all works. So in case you ever need to do this again, or
Mhm.
you need to bring in somebody from, let's say, you have a friend that's lives out of state or out of country, they want to
Yeah.
join. It's a little easier to bring them in on the action versus this way. Um, and so it pays to know. It pays to know the technology. It's a pain in
Yeah.
the butt,
Yeah.
but it's helpful.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Eventually, I come from a big family of 4 brothers and a sister, and eventually, I'm gonna run a game, a D&D game for all of them, um,
Like a family
and
game.
a family
Yeah.
game. And you know what? They're gonna have to. None of them are really nerds, at least not to the extent that I am a nerd, um, which would make it all the more fun.
But that's what I noticed. I've noticed that it's becoming more mainstream now.
Hmm.
I mean,
For
back in the day,
sure.
I think D&D kind of had this stigma, like, oh, it's a nerd game. It's a game for people that hang out in their mom's basement all day. Um, but you hear that celebrities, well-known celebrities like Vin Diesel plays D&D. Guys, these macho guys that you don't think would ever in their life
Yeah.
pick up a D20 or much less know what a D20 is.
Yeah, like
And
me, these macho guys.
those macho guys, look at you, all pumped up. But no, it's serious though. It's. I think it's becoming more of a. I don't want to say accepted because it makes it sound like it was bad in the first place, but it becomes
Right.
more of a mainstream thing, a mainstream game. And I would say to people who are thinking about playing and might be worried about that stigma, don't be worried about it, because you'd be surprised who plays. And it doesn't really, it's not your typical nerdy connotation. It's about hanging out with friends. It's about going on these
Yeah.
adventures. It's about um, you know group interaction. So
Right.
I think that's helpful in making the game more accepted. But just have fun with it. Don't
Yeah.
worry about, oh, gee, what are other people thinking? Is this the right game for me? You'll know if you jump into it. If you're having fun, it's the right game.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. Like, um, yes. Hi,
Hey,
Danny.
Danny,
Welcome
Danny's
back.
back. Yay.
It's kind of like every movie I watch now, I tell Jeff, this is like D&D. That's all I have. I got to get back to the baby. Oh, that's my challenge, getting to the
Catch it.
baby.
Roll for infant.
Yes. Yes. Um, the baby made me lose my train of thought. I'm not gonna lie.
Roll for thought. Hold on, let's see. Oh, it's a
That's
20.
all
I
right.
actually, okay, the one time I actually rolled a nat 20 is when I'm not playing a game.
I just remembered. I have it.
See, my nat 20 helped you.
I know. I know.
I rolled memory for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I actually do remember now. That we stalled enough to help me get my memory back.
Just wait.
I think that even though it may feel kind of like a nerdy thing at first, it really isn't. I mean, if you play board games, it's really not
It's the same thing.
much different.
It's a really intricate board game. That's really all.
Exactly. And you know what? You get to make it as in depth as you want to make it, right? So you can have to the big thing that kind of some people can get, it makes it feel nerdy, is that that role play, right?
Yeah.
But it's also what makes it really interesting and really exciting.
Yep.
And you get to, it's best, I would recommend kind of just working into it, and doing what you're comfortable with, and knowing that if you want to jump full in and just go for it and full on role play, it's only going to make the experience better, right?
Yep.
But if you're kind of like, oh, I want to kind of like lean back a little bit and kind of wait for people to kind of, that's okay too.
Yep,
You
can
got
do
to
that
do
too.
what you got to do.
Yeah.
Um,
There's really no wrong or right way to play the game.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if you don't play, if you just sit there and refuse to do anything, that's wrong. But as far as like role playing, there's really no wrong or right way to do it. It's just what you want to get out of it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I totally agree. Like I said before, when we first started playing, we were playing pretty much everything incorrectly, but we still had the time of our lives. And as we played, we learned how a little bit more and a little bit more each time on how to make that game more enjoyable for us.
Yeah.
And just a little bit more of the rules. But you can totally be flexible on the rules, and and you know what, if your DM is like not super into a rule, he can kind of change it.
Right.
I know we have some specific house specific rules that aren't quite as the same as what you would find in the in the player's handbook. I know in specifically one of the things that we do is our critical hits, right? So when you roll, when you're attacking, you roll a d20, and you roll a nat 20, right? Which means you roll the 20 on the dice without any modifiers, and you do damage, right? Some people, they roll your damage die and double it, right?
Right.
Well, we were like, you know what? If I roll a damage die, though, I could still get a 1, and then we double it, and it's a 2, and that doesn't seem like it's a very critical hit.
Right.
If so
What's
what
the
we
point?
decided, right, is you get the full damage from the damage die that that's associated with your weapon, right?
I
So
gotcha.
take, for example, a short sword. It's 1d6, right?
Right.
So you get full 6 damage, and then you roll another d6, and you add that damage to the initial damage, right? So it's like you get full hit, you get the full damage plus some. So it's always good. So that's what we kind of did, just to make it feel a little better, right? And that's what's so awesome.
Yeah.
You can tweak those little things for to just make it a little bit more interesting for everybody.
Yeah.
So
which kind of leads me into my next segue, and we can touch on this now and then after the break, is what my snack. It was delivered. Thanks, boss. Thought he was sticking me up with a banana. Really inappropriate. Hold on. No, he's not tempting me. No, roll for temptation. Oh, it's a 10. No. That made me lose my train of thought.
yeah.
When it comes to DMs, have you had any experience with really strict by the book DMs versus sort of off the cuff DMs? Anything in between? And what's your take on a DM? Like, what is your, what's your favorite type of DM play?
Well, the funny thing is, I've had very few exposure to DMs because most of the time I'm DMing. So
it's true. Yeah, you're usually God for the most part.
Yeah. So, but what I have noticed and what I have, I think that the DM really determines the amount. Like, as much as it is feels like a lot of pressure, the DM determines a lot of the amount of fun that is had in the game. And not because of what they throw at us. It's really, if the DM feels stressed, everyone else is stressed. But if the DM is just kind of rolling with it, and even if the DM's like, hold on a second, I got to figure something out, but he's like, they're all good about it, it's cool. It's not a big deal. And I think that any good DM will never say no, right? So in the sense of, well, you can try. I
Yeah.
think that that's a good attribute for a DM to have, is for them to say, well, you can certainly try,
Yeah.
and then we just see what happens from there.
Yeah, at least they give you the option.
Mhm.
That's the cool part. So
Yeah. And you know what? With that, we oh, I I guess we have 2 more minutes. I
2
thought
more
we were
minutes.
I thought we were done. Um,
What? What?
what are we gonna
Wow.
do for 2 minutes?
2 minutes.
Uh,
What's your favorite page in the handbook? I don't know.
oh, okay. Obviously, looking at the magic items, that's the best page, because you just like look and you're like, oh, you know what? That's in the Dungeon Master's Manual, not in the Player's Handbook.
So yeah, I was gonna say, well, wait a minute. No,
You're like,
but
what? I'm
actually,
like,
that's the
oh,
thing.
wait.
I actually like the DM guide better than the player's handbook, because the DM guide basically lets you tell a story. Player's handbook is like, well, this is what you got to do. These are the rules.
Yeah, yeah.
You can play these characters, but here's the guidelines. The Dungeon Master's Guide is sort of like, here's how you tell a story. Go for it.
Yeah.
For you guys who both have DM. Okay, so do you think anyone can DM? Or is it like
So we are actually going to go to intermission.
Hold that
so we will come back to that question. Can anyone DM? The answer
When we
after
return.
this. Oh, when we return. Oh, dang it. Yours was better.
Ah.
Yes, good boy. Good boy. Don't be licking your sister's mouth. Down, down. Nuh-uh, down. Good boy, yes. Yay, good boy, Sal. Wait, yay, Sal. Good boy, Sal. Would you like Coco Melon by Pink Yucca Yucca? Or do you want Twirly Woos? Wah, wah, wah. You want wah, wah, wah? You want wah, wah? Do you want wah, wah?
Wow.
Wah. Okay. Let me get you wah, wah. Okay, here we come. Twirly Woos. I know. Coco Melon. Do you want Twirly Woos, wah, wah? Hmm? Oh, okay. Oops. Oh, sorry. Baby, come over here, please. Oops.
Oh, can everybody hear me now? Okay, well, that's why we have these tests. And welcome back, everyone, to 3, sometimes 4 people talking about D&D while we're streaming, while we're fixing technical issues. It's a little bit of a long name. We're working on it. We're taking requests. Anyway.
Freebird.
Again, we're just sitting here. We're having a little discussion here and there, talking about the stream and D&D and kind of what we're gonna do, while our tech crew works out the kinks, such as the one that just happened.
Yep.
We do these things so that those things don't happen. Anyway. We are going to welcome back from our break. We have with us a special guest who's not a special guest. He looks like he's working on something right now, but as you notice with us is Jeff Gadigan, who will be our DM in our stream starting February 3rd, 2 weeks from today. Wave to everybody, Jeff.
He
And
gets
that's
on the
enough
stream,
of
that's what
Jeff.
you have him do. Yeah, right.
That's,
See ya.
we
I
don't
guess
need to hear
that's
anything
all
more from
all we
him.
need.
All right, Jeff, are you working on anything, or are you gonna give us a little word, a little preview about yourself? Okay, he's muted. He's muted. We're still working on it.
Nope, still muted. I guess we'll have to stay.
How's
Oh,
that?
there he is. There you are.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's good. What do you want to know? What would you like to know?
Well, have you DM'd much, Jeffrey?
DM here often.
Way back in the day, I played a little bit, like in the early 90s. I played a little bit. That's when I started. And then I took a long hiatus until Aaron about 2, 3 years ago.
Somewhere around there,
Something
like I
around
think
that.
2 to 3
I think
years
Aaron
ago.
started playing a year before we did, and then he invited Danny and I into their game. And I don't know if you guys already went over this because I was doing tech stuff. So we did that, and then when the pandemic hit, Aaron and I tried to get, like, not streaming, but we tried to get back on the through the Roll20 platform and trying to do everything remote, but it didn't stick because it was a little hard. It was like a bit of an adjustment because we were so used to playing online. And I mean,
Yeah.
in person. I started a campaign which would have been the first campaign that I've done in years. We did one of those, and then the pandemic hit. So back then, we were actually, for us, it was a lot. Like we'd play every Sunday. Was it every Sunday we would play still, or was it every other Sunday? I think it was every Sunday, and we'd alternate.
Yeah. That's what we were attempting to do before it kind of all broke down really quick.
Yeah. So I think what happened was Aaron was the DM of our games for a solid year, and I thought that, does Aaron want to play? Like, maybe he wants to play. Somebody should DM.
And I did want to play.
So we did that, and it was actually fun. The one campaign that I ran pre-pandemic did really well, but then we didn't keep playing. And then I actually thought this after everything got canceled. And I was like, well, now Aaron and I will never play together. We will never be able to play together.
Our chemistry would be too great. It would just.
Oh yeah.
It would just be too much for everyone to handle.
Everyone would be like, "What do we do? Like, we can't do anything."
Like, wow, these two guys, man, they are just
too much
clicking.
awesome in one
All
room.
these rando characters that they make that are just strange characters.
Exactly. There's only so much room for totally off the wall characters.
I don't do off the wall characters though. I'm more of like the straight guy character.
Oh yeah.
Straight off the wall.
Yeah, I'm off the wall. You're just off the ceiling.
I think I've broken a few of your games with
but you know what that's what makes a great DM is you got to be able to roll with the punches.
Yeah, he usually tells us afterwards. You can't Aaron you can't tell because he just rolls with the punches so well. I didn't know I broke his game.
Twice.
What?
I think it was at least twice.
I just
one of those. But he did kill my characters. Well,
I did.
Yeah. He broke your character. You broke your game.
He killed my
He broke your character.
To be fair, it was so the situation was that there was a group of potions. They were stuck in a room, and there's a group of potions in the center of the room, one of which was pitch black. Well, his character drank that potion, failed a save, and died immediately.
Okay, kids, when there's a black potion in a room, don't drink the black potion. There's every other color under the sun, and he goes after the black potion, so of course you're gonna die.
He likes black licorice. He thought
you're gonna die with black. Have you ever eaten black licorice? It's one step closer to death.
It's an acquired taste. Some people enjoy it. Not me, but I'm sure some people do because they still sell it.
It's horrible.
Not like they just stopped making it because nobody was buying it.
Eating
Somebody was
tar.
buying black licorice.
You know, there's someone backstage right now who loves black licorice.
Ooh.
So
Have you been giving my kid black licorice behind my back? Because I don't think she's ever eaten any candy.
That would explain the craziness.
You know? Oh look who made an appearance.
There's the doodle that broke one of your games.
Yep.
A giant Muppet.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what? And we were talking about DMing, and that actually leads really nicely into the question that Danny posed to us, or to me, about, do you think anybody can DM? And honestly, if you want to DM, you can DM. Like, I think it is a lot of work, and it takes a certain amount of flexibility, like we're talking about. Like, inevitably something is going to happen that you're not prepared for, and you just need to be able to roll with the punches, figure things out, have a lot of fun with it, and not get too attached to your campaign because your players are not going to always do what you need to do. But I think the important thing is a willing, like a want to do it. If you want to DM, anybody can DM for sure. But again, if you feel like for some reason you're like forced into a DM position, I think you're going to have a terrible time. Also because it's a lot of work.
So
Good answer.
Yeah, I think anybody can. I agree with you.
Right.
But I think everyone's just kind of under the pressure to do well, or whatever that means. I mean, you find certain DMs. Again, I don't know if they said like we are kind of doing like a beginner stream just kind of to help people because we're kind of on the cusp. Like we're just, a lot of us started out new, and I'm sure we covered all that. But we found that Aaron's got a very different DM style than I do, and I think all those things lends itself to having a good game. It just depends. Like as a DM, you just kind of find a way to create your own way. I mean, there's got to be some chemistry between your group, and that's something that's built out over time, and you get good at it. And really, what it just comes down to is just how much is the fun that you guys have together. In creating this story. The creative storytelling is kind of what really gets me excited about these games, because you never know what's going to happen, because in our case there's 4 different minds creating this one story, and like I'm sure it's like therapy for Danny. I'm sure she probably mentioned that.
It is. It's my therapy. You guys are my therapy. Free
oddly,
therapy.
Danny likes to name her characters after rocks and leaves and dirt.
Nature. I have a hard time coming up with names.
And Aaron actually likes fossils. So, there you go. Maybe that's why this works.
So Danny's next character's name will be Amethyst.
That's pretty.
See, you just gave her an idea.
See, there you go.
Loves it. She loves
Collaboration. That's what I'm
Scientific
talking
name for
about.
Amethyst, Aaron.
What do I think of amethyst?
No, what is the scientific name for amethyst? Since you know all these.
It's just amethyst.
Nature. I don't know. I mean, last game I figured,
You know that amethyst isn't a fossil, right? It's a mineral.
Well,
we cleared that up. Right?
There we go.
Point
Baited
made.
him.
Case in point, right
Here we go.
there.
Aaron, tell me more about fossils.
Okay. Settle down. You know what? You know what would be fun for people? They've been staring at this map, for an hour and a half now, and we haven't mentioned anything about it. So let's talk about it. What we are doing so that everyone can join in on the fun is we're using a program called Roll20. It's a very popular program that people will use to play D&D remotely. There's a lot of different programs out there, so use the one that you like, the one that you are, that you feel works for you guys, because there's a lot of different programs and they do a lot of different things. And if you don't really even need that to play. A lot there, you can do theater of the mind, and kind of just your DM can describe the surroundings and what you do. It's helpful to have a map, especially when in encounters, meaning anytime you kind of go into battle. We call that often like an encounter, and it's helpful to keep track of things. But there's a lot of different programs that you can use to do that, or you can keep it on, your DM can kind of keep track of things. But we're using Roll20. Now, the way that this program works the DM will set up, obviously they'll kind of load a map, and then they'll put these tokens down, and it will really act as the tabletop that you so often see, that it comes from obviously having tabletop RPG games. So it's not as fun as having actual miniatures. That is probably the thing that I miss most about playing in person, is having my minis.
You got a lot of them.
I mean, it's like, you have dice goblins. I feel like I'm a mini goblin.
Mini goblin. Yeah.
I think I'm gonna like, I am figuring out. I want to get like 3D design, like 3D modeling, and start creating my own miniatures, because I think that's
Yeah.
super rad. But
we actually started printing our own minis, which is something that here at Amino Quest, we've got a lot of big things planned, and we're trying to figure out a way to create custom miniatures, make dice, things like that. I mean, we're new, we're excited about the whole thing. We're hoping people like, particularly we're starting with our launch. We're doing I will be running Lost Mines of Phandelver with these three here with us right now, and again, we're gonna try to make it just like a teaching stream from actually a newbie-ish point of view. So hopefully you guys will actually learn. I mean, we've been playing for 2-3 years, but not consistently. So you guys can ask us questions, things like that. We can give you our version. Like, that's basically what we kind of understand, based on some of us based on research, some of us just like randomly figure out that's how it goes. I don't know, but we're looking forward to that. We're hoping that a lot of people will tune in and eventually just see a lot of the things that we do, and maybe learn as much as you can learn from the four of us.
hope that you all have fun and maybe learn a thing or two along the way.
Possibly. And then when okay, so during the pandemic, I spent some time working on our D&D room, which we obviously get to use now. Not really, but I ended up printing a lot of the terrain, a lot of these things, like in preparation for another campaign that we were going to run. We switched. We were going to run Curse of Strahd, but we decided to save that for when we can possibly meet all around the table and in person. Again, because we have some really cool minis and terrain and lots of goodies for you guys to see. Yeah, that's
yeah. So I mean, and that's like, we've all kind of grown into the different things. I've started kind of casting my own dice a little bit, and we're still very much new to this sort of thing. But there's so many resources out there and so many different things that you guys can do and find. Again, when we were kind of talking about Roll20 and how it's basically like a tabletop. I mean, it's technically a virtual tabletop, but it's a really interesting process that you put these tokens on, and you can go to the depth that you really want to go to in this. There's ways on Roll20 to make each character see the light that they can actually see, with maybe it's dark inside and somebody has dark vision and somebody can't. One player can see something, one player can't. As far as like moving things, it's pretty easy. You just kind of drag and drop. As you can probably see, we're kind of moving things around. And so that's a really, it can be fairly simple. Like this one, I wanted to keep it simple because we're still learning about it. So I just kind of basically threw a map on there and threw some tokens on there, and people can kind of move around their tokens. And that's kind of the extent that I went into it as far as this one. But there are more things that you can kind of do with it. And in general with D&D, it's got so many things that you can do. I think that's what makes it so great. It's like the video game that you get to design whatever you want to design in, especially if you're DMing. You can kind of do a lot of different stuff with that. But I love that there are rules, but there are no walls to D&D.
So, really quick, talking about DMs, I wanted to ask, what is your, as a DM yourself, what is the, I guess maybe there are 5, maybe there are more, but what is the 5 major points about being a DM that you'd recommend? Like 5 things that stand out to you.
Oh geez, I got to do 5. It's like
You can do as many as you want. I just threw out 5 because I figured there's more than 5.
It sounds like
a number.
28.
What are 1,000 things?
What are the 700 different points of it?
It sounds like a test question.
Yeah.
Please list 5 things.
Yep.
It's an essay question.
It's an essay question.
Yeah, really. Please have an introductory paragraph and a conclusion paragraph.
Conclusion.
Yeah.
Sentences.
So when you say, do you mean 5 things about like what are important things?
Yeah, like what are the 5 major or 5 key points about being a DM? Things, either things to remember or things to include or things to do, like whatever.
So I think it would be helpful to kind of go through my process of preparing for a stream, right? So what do I do when, I'm getting ready for a stream, and what does that really look like? So it's gonna look a little different for whether you're doing a module that's pre-written versus something that you homebrew yourself. I'll let Jeff kind of talk about what it looks like when he's kind of prepping a little bit for a module. And I'll go over a little bit what it's like to prep for like a homebrew, because I typically homebrew a lot of different things. So my process starts with an overview, right? So I want to know if you're like a brand new DM, just kind of do a quick outline of, I usually have a Word document up and I do a quick outline of what it is that is going to happen, or what it is that ideally is going to happen in the stream, or I'm sorry, in the session, right? So the adventures are in the town of, the adventures are in this town, and they happen upon, a dead body in the center of town, and that leads them on this murder mystery. So, you want to start somewhere, right? And then I find that the map is really important to know and to kind of build, and to kind of get a good idea of what the world that your characters are currently in, what that looks like, and what things are kind of where. And that's a big portion of what I do to actually prepare, because I realize that, okay, the characters are often going to, take, for example, what we have here. My character may be like, okay, or a character may be like, okay, well, what's in this corner, this one little corner of the area right here? Or what's in, this corner over here? You know what I mean? So it's like, if I either need to come up with something really quick and make it up, or I need to have something kind of prepared. And it's easy to prepare that if I've tried to guess what you guys are going to do. So that's a pretty big step in my process. And then the third part of the process is NPCs, right? So that's probably the hardest part. It's easy to design an NPC. Kind of role playing an NPC can be a little difficult. I try to view things as realistically as possible, right? So sometimes I find that a a player might occasionally ask a weird question that probably is not probably someone in real life like wouldn't actually like ask, but sometimes players are going to ask that. And so I'm like, oh quick, how would someone actually respond to this maybe awkward question or this awkward intimidation or something like that, so there's a lot of different things that you can kind of do to kind of prep for that, but usually what I'll do is try to get a good background on that character. And then finally, I design kind of like the encounters. I put items and different things. The nice thing is, you guys build the story, right? So I build the world, and then I put what we would call like an inciting incident, right? In film, we would call it inciting incidents. And then you guys really take them and run with it. You know what I mean? And that's the beauty of it is I try to know the world the best I can, and then you guys run it. I just kind of let it happen. That's kind of my process. Involves a lot of writing on Word documents. And researching things online. So, what about you, Jeff?
I haven't had the privilege to homebrew anything yet. So I do a lot of most of my stuff, my one-shots, everything have been pre-written modules. A lot of things like that, since, again, it's just because it's a time issue for me. I like to do handwritten notes. I think similar, as opposed to using Word or anything like that. I think for me that I'm a very structured person, so to speak. So I like to follow like the planning. First, I have to read everything from cover to cover, preferably if I can, depending on the time crunch and time and everything. I like to read everything cover to cover, maybe twice if I can. But if once, I'll take really detailed notes. I'll do a lot of research online for different things. One thing I enjoy doing, so it's not so by the book, I really enjoy watching people create character and develop character, and I like to see how they interact. Because there's a moment that you see when you see players who are kind of like, and again, most of us, like everybody, yeah, for the most part, everybody in our streams, they're actors or they're an artist. They're in the industry, or they're in theater or film to some degree. This has a very heavy improv factor to it, but not. So I like watching all that emotion come out. I like it when you see a character just kind of click. Like when you see the player and the character kind of click, then you can see how they start to discover how they can drive the story, and they come up with their own quirks and the way that they do it. And I think, as I said, I keep saying that we're relatively new players, and Jim is actually a good example of that, because you see a lot of his and this happens to a lot of people too, is like sometimes the characters tend to more or less feel the same, sound the same. But then when you start coloring it in a little bit, like just a little nuanced things, you start to see the difference, and you can see like the character kind of take over and people having fun, things like that. But then when you see somebody who's used to doing one kind of character and then you switch, I don't know if Jim knows which character I'm talking about, but he made this really strong choice where rather than being motivated by gold or money or anything, he just hit on every woman that he saw, and he'd have this like attraction. Whether it was mutual or not, I don't think it mattered, but it was curious. Like it raised a lot of questions too. I was like, does he just do this with every woman? Does he do it with just one? That one? Like what can come of that? Like what are these other things that can happen? Like just by going with the flow. And Aaron, actually, your characters are very varied. Like they all have their short, like their small little quirks. but your players, the way you play your players, are really smart. They're really unique and they're really smart in the way that you do that. Um, yeah, they're actually very. They drive the story, even though like there's some characters where you just assume, oh, he's kind of the natural leader of the campaign, but you do both. I've seen you play a lot of like just supporting character, secondary character who don't like the limelight, but then they're so like three-dimensional that you can see that. And for and again, that I know that's from a lot of crafting in the background and everything else, but and when it comes to like discovering your character as you go, like I think Danny's actually the newest player that, because I told her I wanted to play D&D and she went along for the first few games and she's never missed a game, but then it took her a while to get into it because I don't think it really clicked with her until she was able to make like a connection to her characters. And her characters more or less they emulate her for the most part. And once people get comfortable, and I think it's what happened with Jim too, they started playing characters that are different from their own personality. Danny's characters, they're not all the same, but she has one that's completely different from the others. Like she's got this real I don't know, sassy kind of I hate
Everybody
type ocean, like this water genasi that's just a I don't know, spitfire, I guess. I don't know what you would call it. That's really, it's refreshing to see when you see them do that. Like just like I think James's character was modeled after Johnny Bravo. And there's a lot of different ways to, kind of find a way to craft your character and whatnot. But those are the type of things that I like to see, like the players that I play with do. And again, I don't have a point of reference. You guys are the only players that have ever played with me, but it's as a DM. But I think that's what really does it for me. I mean, I have again, our background, we're all performers. And a lot of us do different types of performing, dance, improv, musicals, theater, things like that. But we find all those things kind of collide and they come together when you play D&D. Even like the most meek of players end up like they come out of their shell to some extent. Like I have a variety of different, all my characters are quirky, but some of them are different. Some of my characters don't talk, like they'll say one word the whole session, it's just all observing. Or I have another character that's just very like metro kind of this German freak, Sorlock, who's kind of got this like Fabio type look, who just likes to egg on Danny's water genasi. Like he'll use her hair as like a water fountain or a bidet or something.
So much fun to try to figure out what he's going to use her hair for.
Yeah. Well, and I think finding those little things.
And I think what's so awesome is that those little things that may seem they start from a simple idea and they really can build into a strong character over time. I mean, because you think of it, like James's character went from I want to play Johnny Bravo, and then but from starting that, it then kind of builds into something. So I think that that's such a powerful thing for new players to realize, is that your character's gonna grow. Like you don't need to worry about trying to create this super in-depth character right off the bat. Like a great backstory is awesome, but I think you can come up with, an okay backstory, or even a quote unquote boring backstory. You start give them a little quirk, or say, I want to this is going to be the thing that I'm going to kind of build my character around. And it's amazing to see that character just evolve into something.
You see that one choice you make to make that character have a quirk, And the more you play it that way, you kind of starts to raise questions like, why does he do that? Like, why?
Mm-hmm.
What happened? Like, what is his view on? You start to develop views about these characters. Like, why do they have that point of view? Because they're always doing this, and it gets your mind going, which is interesting. Because I when I first started, I asked everyone to write a detailed backstory, and what I found was like, what I love about D&D is the collaborative storytelling aspect of it. So when you ask a character, it can go both ways. If they have a character that's got this real in-depth backstory, I think it it's not like you as a DM, you kind of want to be sure that they left some open for you to fill in,
Mm-hmm.
or to give you like a general idea so you can kind of color it a little bit when the time comes for them to shine in the spotlight, or when you create an NPC or you help them create things. Like before, I used to be very, oh, you have to have this and you understand this, and all the people who played with me have great backstories, or some of them have great backstories, but they're not quite fleshed out. And that's the whole thing. Like, I imagine a homebrew, nothing is fleshed out for the most part, and everything that you write, since it's not a pre-written module or anything, everything that comes up after that's organic. So
Yeah, you guys definitely, the story develops along with a lot of times, like, I have an idea of how I want the campaign and how we want things to go, and it just naturally develops. And that's really, I mean, D&D is collaborative storytelling. And it's just a bunch of people playing and having fun. And at the same time, you get to, you know, be a part of this epic film that unfolds, you know, as you guys play. And it's a lot of fun, a lot of, you know, you laugh, you cry, you feel something, you know.
And sometimes you die.
And
Laugh.
sometimes you die,
Sometimes, yeah.
especially if you're, you know, our characters aren't exactly the most savvy in combat situations. So
We'll get there.
We'll
It's
get there.
growing.
I think
We're growing.
Yeah, and again, we're going to probably wrap up real soon. Like, thanks for sticking around and watching our tech rehearsal,
Yeah.
or whatever you want to call this.
Yeah.
I'm going to step out, but Aaron, if you want to tell them what's happening next week,
Sure
and
thing.
then, you know, be sure that you guys tune in.
All right. Well, next week, we will be here at the same, well, not at the same time, hopefully a little earlier, 6 o'clock. That's when we are starting. So what's happening next week is I'm going to do a little, adventure, a little one shot, as they call it in the biz. And we might have a guest kind of drop in. So look forward to that. They're going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to be an exciting adventure. So thank you guys for sticking. If you're still here, thanks
Thanks a
for
lot.
sticking in. So we are signing off. This is Amino Quest. We will see you next week.
Later,
6
everybody.
o'clock.
Bye, guys. Cool nerds.